Okay, I'm going to do a second take on this, and it's about sexual attraction and human epistemology. Does somebody who has a sexual bond in a benevolent, long term, in love relationship, do, does that sexual bond give them greater knowledge of a human being than somebody in a platonic relationship, a non sexual relationship? For instance, let's say that I am a fan of Einstein. I love his mind. Okay. I love reading his books. I love listening to his lectures. I love everything about Einstein in terms of his academic work. I idolize the man. I have a poster of him in his office, coming up with formulas. Okay. Okay. I idolize this man, but I'm not sexually attracted to him. I can be a straight man. I can be a straight woman. I can be gay. Doesn't matter. Does a person who idolizes Einstein, loves his mind to the same degree I do, but has a sexual attraction to Einstein, does he value his mind more than I? I say absolutely not. Absolutely not. Does he know more about Einstein's mind if he was exposed to the same type of material that revealed Einstein's mind in terms of his formulas and how he developed many of the important scientific theories of our world? Okay, does that sexual bond give him greater knowledge or greater appreciation? Does that sexual bond mean that he appreciates Einstein's mind more than I do? No, no, it doesn't. So that's a myth. So again, this is part of the moral myth that is done with well intentions, but it's part of the moral myth that permeates our society, that somehow there's some type of nobility or some type of character, uh, some type of special character in the person who can find Einstein sexy based purely on his mind. Okay, so we go. So let's read this example to the senior citizens. See, most men, most women, particularly most men, but a lot of women that are around their 20s do not find senior citizens sexually desirable. Do the minority of men and women who can find senior citizens desirable, based upon their sense of humor, being kind, all inner traits, do they value these? Do they know? Do they recognize the inner traits of these senior citizens more than those who cannot find them sexually desirable? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's no you have to demonstrate proof that that is true. Like clearly, but constantly in our society, we are desperate to make the sexual bond an eternal, until you die, reality. Why? Because we want to be sexually desired until we're old. Is that it? So what? So what if I want to be sexually desired until I'm old? That does not mean someone is morally obligated to find me sexually desirable. And to make it your goal is to say that sexuality somehow, if you lose sexual desire, lose sexual desirability, from less people find you sexually desirable, that you are just dead, that you will be paralyzed. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, like everything else, of course, you're going to have, it's going to be uncomfortable and you're going to be hurt a little bit. Okay. And when you realize that, no, you're not as desirable to other people than you once were. Okay. That doesn't mean that it's a personal, and it's personal, and we must find ways to remedy that by trying to consistently trying to compromise human epistemology, which clearly does not side with the claim that sexuality makes you know somebody more. Okay, that's one of the greatest myths out there. Knowing somebody in a friendship, somebody in a non-sexual relationship does not need to be in a sexual relationship to know that person in a greater level. Okay, because even even quote unquote benevolent sexuality, which the modesty apologist, and I call it the modesty apologist, and I give a definition of the modesty apologist, but the modesty apologist continues to promote this notion that we must find ways to make sexuality directly correspond to inner beauty. And I don't understand why. In the first place, if we would not put sexuality in in place and say that, well, sexuality is so important, and if we lose it in a benevolent romantic relationship, there's something gone. And we can't really demonstrate it. We only, I guess some people feel that way. So, in my mind, the solution is to stop valuing sexuality, any type of sexuality, uh, to that level. Now, you're talking to a person who celebrates sexuality, okay? And even if I had the experience of benevolent sexuality, where I would be sexually attracted to somebody based purely on their intelligence, I would still find it annoying and dangerous to continue to promote and continue to try to come up with this falsehood that, well, since I had this experience, that means the people who don't have this experience are shallow, and they're deciding and they're trying to block this type of transcendental proof of inner beauty uh, being the ideal and the only true way of a sexual truth. Okay, it's just false. It is false. It doesn't matter. Well, okay, we live inside our bodies, so people calling us ugly is going to hurt us. Yes, you're right, but that doesn't mean that you can now make the moral conclusion that it must be true that sexual bonds were ultimately made in the cosmos, or ideally made in the cosmos, to directly correspond to inner beauty. That's just not. That's your heart. That is your heart. That is your compassion overriding just a fundamental underlying truth in human epistemology. Okay, you can't compromise the truth of epistemology, of human epistemology, in order to satisfy a well-intentioned ideal. That is what I'm saying. You cannot do that. That is just, you will never succeed in your ideal. The ideals that some people want to succeed in terms of anorexia, bulimia, plastics, people doing obsessive plastic surgery, people really hating their bodies, because I was at that point where when I was a teenager, I thought it was too skinny. All these problems are not solved by um, cheapening the integrity of human epistemology to promote these moral truths, because you're using it as a utilitarian device. And I understand that you're using it in a well-intentioned form, but it's not the truth. It's simply not true. It is not true. That's all that matters. The truth, and it is not. It is not like we can't. It's not. It's not one of those things that are questionable. It's blatantly obvious. Okay, it's blatantly obvious when you take the emotions away and you look at sexuality. Okay, sexual intercourse, even the most benevolent form of sexual intercourse, of the highest form of nobility. Okay, okay, I don't deny that's not a reality. But if you take that does not translate into sexuality making you know somebody more. Okay, and to say that, well, you know somebody in a different way, in a sexual way, this having sex with somebody to say that you get to know somebody. Um, yeah, I guess in the sexual sense, in terms of what they prefer or what they don't prefer, yes. But in the fundamental, essential sense, no, it's not true. I had a philosophy teacher say that to me. It's not true. It's not true. That's that's why I have a fundamental problem with it. It's not true. I understand why it's said. I understand the utilitarian purpose of why it's said. But you're not gonna correct bulimia. You're not gonna correct anorexia. I mean, yes, some people will believe that, and you will believe the falsehood in the utilitarian sense. But the bottom line is that, bottom line, instinctually and just intuitively, not just logically, you're going to have less. You're not going to solve bulimia, anorexia, body image, and all these things based on these falsehoods. You're not going to correct them. You're not. You're not. You're basically. You're hoping that somebody will just. I don't know how to necessarily explain this. Okay, but the problem is that primarily and fundamentally, these things are false. You can't say that you know somebody more. No woman, no man who's attracted to Einstein based on his intelligence can say that they know that person, can value intelligence or know more about his intelligence because it's on a sexual level, because they find him on a sexual level than somebody that doesn't find him attractive. And just a general claim that if you're in a if you're you find somebody, you're talking to somebody or you're interacting with somebody and you are attracted to them based on their personality, whether, I don't care what it is. Okay, you can't say that somebody that finds that person still not attractive cannot know that person the same way you do. I'm talking about their inner fundamental self. The inner fundamental self can be known by anybody. Okay, and the inner fundamental self does not require you to find them sexually attractive. That is the fallacy of the idealist. The idealist wants so bad this vision to happen, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it in terms of this with its ideal, but there's something wrong with it when they try to say it is the truth. The perfect example is elderly people. You can know elderly people, you can hang around elderly people, and a 20 something or 30 something may find them sexually attractive based on their personality, or maybe find them sexually attractive based upon their elderly physique. That doesn't mean you can't sit there and turn that around and say, well, the person who can find them sexually attractive knows them more because they're willing to integrate with their bodies. Okay, because their physical bodies are not themselves, are not the essential self. Yes, they live in these bodies, but the bodies are not the reflection of the essential self of these senior citizens. Okay, so it doesn't matter. The thing is that people say, well, we have to be comfortable with our bodies because we live in them. That's true in some utilitarian sense or some practical sense, yes. But that doesn't mean that you can start making claims that are not epistemologically true by saying the inside and the outside are, basically you can't separate them. They're holistic. No, they are separate. they're integrated in the sense, but they're separate. We know what is fundamental, what the essential self is. It's not, your skin tone. It's not wrinkles. It's not your eye color. The fundamental self has nothing to do with those things. The essential self has nothing to do with those things. So therefore, they are separate. They're separate in perception. They're separate in how we know human beings. Just because all these components are together, in a sense, doesn't mean that they are the same. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not the same. There's no paradox. They're fundamentally different. My height, my skin color, um, the tone of my skin color, whether I have wrinkles, that is not my fundamental self. It will never be my fundamental self. And since it's not my fundamental self, someone can still see them discreetly or separately. So doesn't Judge Judy was talking about looks fade. Well, no shit, looks fade. That doesn't mean that now it's the truth that if you're a nice person, you're going to be seen sexually desirable forever. Okay, it's just not true. And another thing is this false notion that you deserve to be sexually desired. Where did we get that from? There is no guarantee that you can be sexually desired forever. There's no guarantee in the cosmos, whether it be nice or not. You say you need, people say we need to be sexual. We have this need for others to find us sexy. There's no need. There's a want. There's an absolute want that we consider a need. Don't get me wrong. There is a fine line between need and want, a psychological need and a psychological want. Okay, but it is very possible for somebody not to find being sexually desired necessary. Okay, so that is the thing that we have to get rid of. We have to get rid of this notion that sex, having sexual intercourse means, once you have sexual intercourse with somebody, now you know the fundamental, the essential I, or the essential self. Complete nonsense. If I took my penis out right now, you would not know any more about me. You can't say this self of being me having a private penis, private vagina, as this is like some type of mystery, I don't know how to describe it, but some type of magical organ. I have to treat it as, if we keep it hidden, it's like magic and a mystery. Just this type of mystery that of us, which are in our penises and our vaginas and our breasts, that if you share it with somebody, then they know your fundamental self. They know your entire self is mythology. You don't have to know somebody's entire self. Sexuality does not complete knowing somebody's entire self. First of all, you say it's part of yourself, somewhat, yes. You can say that your skin color is part of yourself, but I'm talking about the fundamental, essential self, the one that is relevant in terms of why we love somebody, why we want to be around somebody. Beyond, fundamental self, the fundamental self. Okay, that's not the fundamental self. Your looks are not the fundamental self, and then that's how I look at it. I can't use it to try to use paradoxical ways to resolve this issue. It just doesn't work. So that's enough of my rants, and I hope if you guys have any questions, just leave them. But that's how I feel about it. Thanks a lot.